The most socially intelligent people in the room say the least, not because they are shy, because they have already seen everything they need to see. Picture it. You are at a dinner table, 8 people. Someone makes a comment that lands slightly wrong, an edge in the tone, a flicker of something in the eyes of the person sitting across from them. You feel it before you can name it. A low-grade static in the chest, the invisible current that runs beneath conversation. Most people at that table feel nothing. They keep eating, they keep talking, they keep performing their version of having a good time. But you felt it. And here is the problem. Feeling it is not enough. Because what you did next, whether you leaned in to smooth it over, deflected with a joke, or mentally cataloged it and said nothing, that response tells you exactly where you rank on the hierarchy we are about to discuss. Your instincts are not the problem. Your instincts are sharper than most. The problem is what happens after the instinct. The interpretation, the response, the story you construct about other people and why they do what they do. That construction is either a weapon or a cage. Right now, for most of you, it is a cage. Today, through the framework Schopenhauer spent his life building from observing human nature in its rawest, most undisguised form, we are going to map 5 levels of social intelligence. Where you rank will be uncomfortable. What you do with that ranking will determine everything. Here is why most people are socially blind. They were trained to be. From childhood, you were taught that people mean what they say. You learned that cooperation is the default human mode. You were conditioned by classrooms, by parenting, by every institution that needed you compliant, to take social reality at face value, to interpret the surface as the truth. The problem is that no one performs on the surface. The surface is the mask. The real transaction, the exchange of status, of dominance, of fear, of desire, happens 3 layers below what anyone admits out loud. You learn to read words, but the system runs on something else entirely. Schopenhauer called it the will, the blind, insatiable drive that animates every human being. Not reason, not goodwill, not cooperation. A relentless, hungry, largely unconscious force that shapes every conversation, every alliance, every betrayal. Your cortisol spikes when someone questions you in public, not because you are fragile. It spikes because your nervous system accurately detects a dominance challenge that your conscious mind is too polite to acknowledge. It is a survival mechanism, not a success mechanism. And every level of social intelligence on this hierarchy is defined by how much of this you can see, and how cleanly you can use what you see. Schopenhauer understood something that modern social culture has tried to breed entirely out of you. He spent decades studying the architecture beneath human behavior, not what people claim to want, but what the structure of their actions revealed they actually wanted. In his essay on human nature, he wrote that people are, at their core, remarkably consistent creatures. They pursue self-interest. They construct rationalizations to make that pursuit appear noble, and they are almost entirely unaware that they are doing either. Translate that to a modern boardroom, a family dinner, a negotiation over text message. The man telling you he wants a fair deal is reading his own emotions as evidence of his fairness. The friend who says she supports you is measuring your success against her own. The colleague who offers unsolicited advice is managing his anxiety about your potential. They are not lying. That is almost the most dangerous part. They believe what they say completely, and that is precisely why reading them requires a different instrument than the one you were handed. Before we climb the hierarchy, understand what social intelligence is not. It is not charm. Charm is a performance. A parrot can be charming. It is not likability. Likability is compliance wearing a smile. It is not emotional sensitivity. The most emotionally sensitive people in any room are often the most socially lost, because they feel everything and understand almost nothing. When you mistake emotional reactivity for social intelligence, you are a tuning fork. You vibrate in response to every frequency around you. You mistake absorption for perception. When you confuse social skill with manipulation tactics, you are a knife that cuts the hand that holds it. The tactics without the underlying model of human nature will eventually be used against you by someone who has the model. But the darkest truth is this: if you have spent your life believing that people are fundamentally reasonable, fundamentally good faith actors who can be persuaded by logic and treated with straightforward trust, you are not an optimist. You are prey. And the predators around you have been grateful for your optimism every single day. Social intelligence is the capacity to see what is actually happening, not what should be happening, not what people claim is happening, what is actually happening. Now, the 5 levels. This is the bottom, not stupidity, not malice, exposure. The person at level 1 has no model of other people as independent strategic agents. They experience the social world as a series of things that happen to them, inexplicably, unpredictably, often painfully. They cannot locate patterns in behavior because they have never learned to look for the engine beneath the behavior. Schopenhauer described this person precisely. They take the representations of the world, the visible surface, as the world itself. They believe in the presented face. They trust the stated reason. They are perpetually confused when the stated reason and the actual reason diverge, and they diverge constantly. The level 1 individual interprets betrayal as an anomaly, a bad person in an otherwise trustworthy world. Each betrayal resets them to baseline optimism because they have no framework for expecting otherwise. They are not wounded. They are recurrently surprised by the same wound. The physical metaphor for this level: a moth, drawn toward light without any model of what fire does. How to identify a level 1 in conversation. They explain why they were hurt, at length, with a focus on what the other person should have done. The moral framework is their only instrument. When the moral argument fails, when the other person simply doesn't care that they should have behaved differently, the level 1 has no remaining tool. The shadow question Schopenhauer forces us to ask. If you find yourself regularly explaining to people how they ought to have treated you, if the phrase, "I just don't understand why they would do that," lives in your mouth like a resident, it is not because other people are unusually opaque. It is because you are operating without a map. Most men watching this video are here. Level 2 is characterized not by blindness, but by delayed sight. The level 2 individual can eventually see what happened. They reconstruct it accurately. In hindsight, 3 hours later, 3 days later, they see the move that was made, the manipulation that was run, the status game that was played, but they could not see it in real time. And so they responded reactively. They got defensive when they should have gone cold. They over-explained when they should have gone silent. They showed their cards when a professional player would have shown nothing. Schopenhauer had a name for this mechanism. He called it the tyranny of immediate motivation. The strongest stimulus in the immediate environment seizes control of the will, and reason arrives afterward to rationalize whatever the will already did. Translate that. You reacted first. Then you explain to yourself why your reaction made sense. The level 2 individual knows they are being tested. After the test is over, they know they gave too much away. When they are driving home alone and replaying the conversation, they know exactly how they should have responded, when it is 3 days too late. This creates a specific and recognizable exhaustion. The exhaustion of perpetual self-prosecution, the internal courtroom where you endlessly retry a case you already lost. How to identify level 2 in yourself? Replay your last difficult conversation. Did you respond to what the person said, or to the emotion that their words triggered in you? If you responded to the emotion, you are at level 2. The emotion was the lever. They pulled it, consciously or not, and you moved. The wolf does not respond to the bait. It reads the placement of the bait and looks for the hunter. Level 3 is the first level that Schopenhauer would recognize as genuinely dangerous. The reader has developed what he described as the capacity to see through the veil of Maya, the layer of appearance that most humans mistake for reality. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to stop being surprised by betrayal. enough to see a dominance move while it is being made rather than after it lands, enough to recognize that a compliment can be a trap, that an apology can be a power play, that an offer of help can be a debt being constructed. The reader is no longer primarily reactive. They have built, through observation and often through painful experience, a working model of human motivation. Not a cynical one, a clinical one. The reader understands that people are not fundamentally good or bad. They are fundamentally driven, and the drive is almost always towards self-preservation, status, and resource. Everything else, the warmth, the generosity, the stated principles, is real on the surface and instrumental at the root. This is not a comfortable understanding to carry. The shift that defines level 3. The level 3 individual begins to listen to what is not said, the pause before a yes, the slight change in vocal register when someone discusses money, the specific person who is never mentioned in the conversation, even though they are obviously central to it. They read the negative space, what level 3 cannot yet do. Control what they see. The reader absorbs everything and processes much of it consciously. This creates its own burden. They know too much to be comfortable and not enough to be certain. They see through people and still cannot always determine what to do with what they see, but they have crossed the threshold. They no longer live in the world others have constructed for them. The architect does not merely read the room. The architect designs what happens in the room, where the reader observes the social chessboard and plays defensively, blocking, parrying, retreating at the right moment. The architect controls the opening position before the game begins. They have understood something that Schopenhauer identified as the core of genuine social mastery. The frame you set before a conversation starts determines the range of outcomes available within it. The architect operates upstream. They are not reacting to conditions, they are constructing them. This is not manipulation in the crude sense, the cheap tactics of the level 2 trying to fake a higher level. It is architecture, the slow, deliberate design of environments, relationships, and conversational structures that produce specific results without force, without obvious maneuvering, without the coarse fingerprints of someone trying to get something. Schopenhauer described the truly intelligent social actor as one who understands that the will of others is never overcome directly. Confrontation produces resistance. Pressure produces counterpressure. The architect never pushes against the will of another person. They redirect it. They give the other person's will somewhere to go that also serves the architect's purposes. The physical metaphor? Water. Water does not break the stone. It finds every available path, and eventually the stone no longer matters. What level 4 looks like in practice? The level 4 individual arrives in a negotiation, having already established the terms through conversations held weeks earlier. They have already positioned the opposing party to want the outcome the architect wants. By the time the formal conversation begins, it is largely ceremonial. They do not explain their position under challenge. They ask questions that cause the challenger to explain theirs, and in explaining, to reveal what is actually driving the challenge. They do not defend themselves in social conflict. Defense is a concession that the attack deserves a response. Instead, they reframe. The burden of level 4, loneliness. The architect can no longer fully participate in ordinary social exchange because they cannot stop seeing its structure. Every conversation becomes partly transparent. Every relationship partially architectural. This is the price. The world does not reward innocence. It rewards the capacity to see what others cannot. This is the level most people will not believe exists. The level 5 has moved past the architect's deliberate construction. They have internalized the model so deeply that what was once strategy is now instinct. They are not consciously designing the room. They are simply being, and the room organizes itself around them. This is what Schopenhauer called the philosopher who has seen through the veil so completely that the veil itself no longer produces anxiety. The level 5 individual does not need to manipulate because they have no agenda that requires manipulation. They have ceased to need things from people in the way that drives lower-level social maneuvering. And paradoxically, precisely because they need nothing, people offer them everything. The invisible exercises social authority the way a cold room exercises authority over temperature. Without effort, without announcement, without the coarse machinery of deliberate influence. They speak less than anyone. When they speak, disproportionate weight attaches to the words, not because they chose clever words, but because the weight of their silence has been established in advance. They do not try to be respected. The attempt itself would undermine the result. They exist in a state of complete indifference to the social calculation, and that indifference is read by everyone around them as absolute self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is the only currency that commands genuine respect rather than performed respect. The paradox, and it is the central paradox of this entire framework, the moment you stop trying to influence people, you become the only person in the room who actually influences them. The shadow question for level 5. Here is where shadow work enters this framework, and where Schopenhauer demands honesty from you. If you suspect you are at level 5, you are almost certainly not. Level 5 is not a destination you declare. It is a condition others observe in you. The invisible has no interest in being recognized as invisible. The moment you want the credit for the indifference, you have revealed that the indifference was performed. And performed indifference is just level 2 wearing a philosopher's coat. Knowing where you rank is worthless without knowing how to move. Here is how to begin climbing from wherever you are. Scenario 1. The public challenge. You are in a meeting. A colleague questions your competence in front of others. Not directly, cleverly. A question framed as curiosity that is actually a status attack. They say, "I'm just wondering if you've thought through how this would actually work in practice." Weak. Yes, absolutely. I've thought about it extensively. Here's what I considered. This is the mistake. You have accepted the implied frame that your competence is in question and must be defended. You are now on trial in a courtroom you walked into voluntarily. Every word you speak adds evidence to the prosecution. The Schopenhauer response. Hold eye contact for exactly 4 seconds. Do not fill the silence. Then, what specifically concerns you? Pause again. 2 seconds. This is called the frame reversal. It works because you have declined to accept the frame of the attack and redirected the burden of proof. They must now articulate a specific concern, which is far harder than implying one. The implied attack is a ghost. You cannot punch a ghost, but you can ask a ghost to become solid. And once it is solid, you can examine it in the light. Scenario 2. The social probe. Someone at a dinner meeting you for the first time asks, "So what do you do?" This is never just a question. It is a sorting mechanism. They are establishing hierarchy. Weak. I'm in industry. I work at company. We basically... You have handed them your identity for evaluation. They are now your audience. You are auditioning. The Schopenhauer response. A slight pause. Then, a few things. What made you curious? This is the redirection technique. You have declined to perform. You have turned the question back toward their interest, which forces them to become the one revealing something. Now you have information. They have performed. The dynamic is inverted in under 5 seconds. Study your conversations this week. In every exchange, find the moment where someone is probing for your position. Your rank is partly determined by whether you notice the probe in real time or only 3 hours later. This is not a self-improvement framework. Let that settle. Self-improvement assumes a self that is inadequate and must be upgraded. Schopenhauer's framework assumes something far colder, that reality operates by laws most people never examine, and that the refusal to examine them is not innocence. It is abdication. What we have been discussing is not a set of techniques for winning conversations. It is a way of seeing, and once you see in this way, you cannot unsee. You cannot choose to return to the comfortable belief that people are primarily what they say they are. This is not a technique. It is a philosophical position. a stance toward reality that accepts human nature as it actually functions, not as we wish it to function. The man who lives in the world as it is has an insurmountable advantage over the man who lives in the world as it should be. The paradox is this: the moment you stop needing people to be what they are not, you become capable of working with what they actually are. And that capacity is the only genuine social power that exists. Carved in stone, Schopenhauer would write, "The man who cannot bear reality will always be ruled by the man who can." Here is your challenge. For the next 30 days, you are forbidden from explaining yourself when challenged, not defending, not clarifying, not producing your evidence. When someone challenges your competence, your character, or your position, you say nothing, or you ask a question. That is the complete range of your permitted responses. Every time you feel the urge to explain, and you will feel it burning, you will feel it rising in the chest like pressure that needs release. Let it burn. Sit in it. That discomfort is not weakness. That discomfort is the work. Watch what happens to the people around you when you stop handing them the weapon they were hoping you would hand them. There are two kinds of people in every room: those who are being read and those who are doing the reading. You cannot occupy both positions simultaneously. If you are ready to stop being the one who is read, comment below, "I study, I don't perform." Subscribe, not because I told you to, because you are done being the moth.